Hey guys, it's Tina Logassi here from Prim Heirloom Designs, and we're on to the donkey of the Nativity Scene Series. So he's super cute. He's got much less embroidery on him, but he's got a lot of interesting different things that we're going to be doing. So I'm excited to show you this. So to start, he's just a single pattern piece. And because the pieces are so tiny, I really do recommend you use sulky or freezer paper for these pieces to get nice accurate cuts. And some of these small ones I won't even cut out fully until I'm about to assemble them onto the larger pieces so that I don't lose anything. Okay, so the first thing you need is I've got some scraps of wool blend felt here. It's already been pre-shrunk, and if you get the kit, you still need to pre-shrink your felt. And what I've introduced here, I'm going to do this sample with an evergreen for his coat right here. If you buy the kit and my original pattern, I used the like a thin fleece. Again, I do like to play a little bit with textures and different things in these figures, but in the event that you can't get a hold of something like this, I want to show you that you can do the same thing just using some felt. Then you're going to need your matching embroidery colors, and the color map will be linked below. Then you've got your pipe cleaners. For this, you need some jump rings. You'll see those are what we've got hanging on around his harness. It really depends on the size of your suede. A 4 or a 5 millimeter jump ring will work for this. And then for the suede, I like a lighter color. You can often find it like at the dollar store or the equivalent, a pack like this, and you can try a different color with it. Yeah, so then there's real suede and faux suede are two that are both usually available. And then you got your little thing of twigs. You can easily make this yourself by taking some twigs from outside and wrapping a piece of wire around it. This particular one is, give you an idea how big you need it, it's about 2.5 to 3 inches in total length. So some of these pieces are all different sizes, but they all fit within that. And there's probably 1, 2, 9, 10, probably about 20 pieces of thin twig. I actually just picked this up at the dollar store. You can sometimes find them, but if not, you can definitely make your own. And then I've got just a small amount of Spanish moss. And then in addition to that, you're going to need some stuffing. I use sheep wool stuffing, but you can also use polyfill. Stuffing tool. I actually brought up my purple thing. Finally, the end of mine's broken off, but it still works really well, so I'll show you that. Wire cutters, basic hand sewing supplies, hot glue gun, and white glue are all things you're going to want to have on hand. So we'll start like all of our other patterns. I'm going to cut these out. You'll notice the small pieces, I'm just going to cut them out in a big piece. You'll see what I mean. All right, so I'm back here. So you can see there's this image. I'm just going to put this aside because it helps you line up all the pieces in the nose area and shows you how they fit together. So that's an important one to keep. And then you'll see that, actually I'll start and I'll go one by one. So the lips, you see I've just kept them together and they're such small pieces that I don't want to lose any of them. So I'm just going to peel this off, sulky, and I'm going to cut them out as a pair. And I will not cut these out until we're going to actually need those pieces. And I'm going to do the same for the hind toes, front toes, and even the nose pieces. They do require French knots on them, so they're going to need to be soaked, but I will not cut them out until I'm about to throw them right into that water bath, just to make sure that I do not lose them. Okay, so you can see I've got all of my pieces cut out, all of the small pieces. I've left them on a larger piece of felt, and all of these will just get cut out afterwards, so they're all going to get put aside. And I'm going to focus and show you the embroidery that you need to do. So I'm actually going to start with the nose, and it's 3 strands of black floss, and this is the first time we're doing a French knot. So I'll show you how that goes, and you may want to Google it and see someone else do it, I'm not sure, but I'm going to come in kind of on one side of that nose, and I'm going to wrap thread around my needle twice, and then I'm going to come out on the other side, and then I'm going to pull that tight and hold it in place, and I'm going to pull this through. It sometimes can be tricky. Okay, and then I'm going to pull slowly. And there's your French knot. All right, and then you're going to come back here and tie it off. It's hard because there's not a lot of real estate on that back, so you want to make sure that you're tying off inboard of the nose. All right, and then I'll show you that once more. I'll do the other side. All right, so I'm coming in on this side of the nose because I've got more real estate to hide my knot back there. And I'm gonna come twice around and then go through the other side. Pull it tight, but not too tight. You still need to get that needle through there. Okay, give it a little tug. Pull it slowly, and you'll see you'll get a nice little French knot formed. And I'm gonna kind of move my thread more inboard, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and tie this off. Okay, however you want to do that. So those are done. And again, when I go to soak this, I'm going to cut it and then soak the sulky off of it. Then the eyes, so I don't need the 3-strand anymore. I'm going to show you just one of the eyes, and I'm following along with my pattern notes. So you're going to start with 2 strands of white. And you're going to be filling in the white of his eyes, kind of with a satin stitch. You can Google what that is if you don't know. But I'm basically just filling that area in with stitches as well as I can. All right, and now I just did 2 there to kind of capture that curve. And now I'm just going to do some singles in here. And you're just trying to get those stitches as close together as possible. And I think I can just get one more in there and come through that same hole just because of the curvature. All right, and then I'm going to do the same to this other side. I might be able to get 3 stitches in this side. It's all very small, so just take your time with it. Here I'm just going to come straight into that same opening and do one more over here. All right, and that's already the first color done. So then you're going to tie that off. All right, next I'm going to come in with 2 strands of my brown, and I'm going to do a satin stitch over the eye area. I can probably fit 3 to 4 stitches in there. Okay, I got 3, and that's good enough. And now I'm going to tie that one off. Okay, and the last step is to come in with a single strand of the black. All right, so you're going to basically do a small stitch all around the brown, and then an outline stitch, and then do the eyebrow. And this is all just with a little back stitch. So right now I'm trying to make a bit of a circular shape around that eye. Okay, and now I'm going to come back and back stitch all the way around the eye. So start just at one corner here. All right, and then also remember that you can see better in here that this upper line is the eyebrow, and the upper eye part that you're doing is right across the top of where your satin stitches were. So I'm going to first come across here and just above where I did my satin stitches for the white of the eye and the pupil. Okay, and now I'm going to come back and do that eyebrow. See, I'm taking some pretty tiny stitches here to get that nice curve. Okay, so that's one eye done, and I'm going to do the same to the other side, and then I'll meet you back here. All right, guys, I'm back. I've got my pieces embroidered and ready to soak in the water to remove the sulky. The donkey only has 4 pieces, and I'm just going to remove this bit of the sulky that doesn't have any embroidery on it, and then I'm just going to go ahead and toss those pieces in the water. There's already some stuff floating in my water because I was using it already once today for this, and these I'm just going to throw in as is and let those soak for about 5 minutes. All right, so for these pieces, you're just going to be taking them up, and around the French knot, you're going to be a bit careful. You don't want to pull that stitch back through, but you do want to get that sulky out from underneath. And then I like to take this knot on the back and make sure it's facing inward so that it dries that way. And again, just press that water out. And with this one as well, you're going to want to push that knot away from that edge and then press that water out. And then for the eyes, you're just going to rub a little bit, okay, till it's clean, and then again press it out. So we're going to let these pieces dry, just dry a few hours overnight. It's when that felt is nicely dry, they're ready to work with, and then we can start building up the donkey. Hey guys, I am back, and we are going to go further with this donkey. So all of my pieces are dried, and I'm just going to follow through with the pattern. So the first step is to take 2 pipe cleaners, and you're going to cut off as much of the hair as you can to really get it down to the wire. Okay, so I've got some of my pieces already cut. So I've got the 2 pipe cleaners with the fluff removed, and out of one of them I already was able to cut the 2 ear pieces, the front legs, the tail, and now from the second piece I'm going to cut my 2 remaining pieces for the hind legs. So starting with the ears, you remove that sulky, all right, and then you got your little ear pieces. So all you're doing is going to take 2 of these. You're going to take 2 of these ear pieces, throw a bit of glue on there, and put one of those little wee pieces of pipe cleaner on. Okay, and then these 2 will end up going on top, and they'll get whip stitched around. Put those aside for a moment. We'll move on to the tail. Now for the tail, be careful when you go to remove this sulky. If you go too fast and too aggressively, you may end up ripping the tail in half or changing the geometry of it, which you don't want. Okay, and so I'm just going to take this little piece just to give it a little bit of structure, and it'll get glued into place. Alright, and then that one will get that little piece on top of it. So I'm going to come in with my gray floss, and for the ears I'm going to start at the base of the ears, and I'm just going to go around and do a small whip stitch around that pipe cleaner. Alright, so you can see I've come around with my whip stitch all the way around. I'm ending down at the base of the ear, and I'm just going to go into that loop to do a small little tie off and cut it close. And I'm going to repeat this for the other ear and the tail. Okay, so you can see I've got my ears ready and the tail, so those pieces are just going to get put aside for now. We're going to move on to the front legs. So I've got my front legs positioned so that they're 2 facing one direction, and two facing the other direction. And then I've got all the little toes, which I'm going to move up so you can see them. All the little toes there. So we're going to start by gluing these little toes ever so, just this little smallest little bit of glue in there. Okay, because you don't want it to come to the edge because you will be sewing around. Just do your best to get those little toes on there. Okay, and then I'm going to pair them up. Whoops. See why I do it like this? I'm going to pair them up in their final assembly. I just do this so that I make sure I don't mess up. And I've got two that match, and then these two that match with the toes on the outside. So now I know that I've got my two pipe cleaners. I'm going to open up this side and put a pipe cleaner will go there. And then I'm going to open up this side and one will go there. So with these ones, you're going to definitely want to do a little bit of forming with that pipe cleaner. And in the end, you might need to cut a little bit off at the top. That is completely okay. All right, and those will get glued into place. Okay, so you can see here that I've got my two legs with the pipe cleaner on them. That's been glued into place. And I also trimmed up the pipe cleaner so it's down a little bit from that top. And then I've got my matching tops. And now we're just going to move on to the hind legs and get the same thing done to them. Okay, so I peeled the sulky off of my hind legs and I've got them lined up the same way I did the front legs, where I've got two facing one direction and two facing the other. And I'm just going to take these toes and do the same thing. This is the larger set of toes. And obviously the hind legs will be easier to work on because they're just that bit bigger. And I'm going to go ahead and glue those on. Okay, and then I'm going to flip them over and find their matching part, their matching side. Okay, so they'll go like that. And then I've got my pipe cleaners. So now I'm going to go ahead and open these up and end up putting a pipe cleaner on that one and on that one. So these ones, again, you're going to want to form them a little bit. Get that little toe in there. And then bend around that part. And then that'll get glued into place, and I'm going to do the same to the other one. Okay, so I've got my hind legs ready as well, so I'm going to just flip the tops over top, like so. And we're going to start to sew these around. So I'm going to start with one of these little ones because they're tiny and the more challenging of the legs. So I'm going to start up here and make my way down with my gray floss. And I'm just going to sew down to where that toe starts, and then I have to switch colors. So I'm just doing my normal whip stitch. You can see I've come right down to that toe where it starts. Now I got to switch to my other floss. So I'm going to leave this one attached. This is where having two needles comes in handy. And I'm just going to go in that front layer so that I can hide that knot inside. And I'm going to go through all four of those layers and whip stitch around the bottom of this toe. Okay, when I get up to the top of the toe, I'm just going to take just an extra stitch to make sure I'm nicely secure. And I'll come in once more and I will go into my loop, get a nice little knot, and then I'm going to back through so that I can hide my tail inside of that toe. All right, and now to get this one over to the other side, I'm just going to go in behind like that, in between the front and the back, and now I'm on the other side. Okay, so we do need to start to stuff. I know it's tiny, but if you can, throw a little bit of stuffing in. So I'm just going to do a few stitches. You are likely not going to get anything in this toe because there's 4 layers of felt there. But I'm going to grab my tweezers here, my handy tweezers. And again, it always helps to, when you're doing the really small stuff, to roll up your polyfill or sheep wool stuffing. And again, having a very fine tool to try to help you get that stuffing in makes it a lot easier. All right, so I've gotten a little bit in, and that's fine. And I'm just going to use these to sort of push that stuffing out of the way of where I'm going to be stitching. Please ignore my red thumb. That's from me. I was painting wooden oranges earlier today, and I couldn't get it all off. All right, so I'm just going to go in here. As you start to come up out of that really small section, it will get a bit easier to add in some stuffing. Pretty much when you kind of get up to the knee is another good spot to pause. And I'm going to take my tweezers and try to press that bit in there. And you're going to continue with your whip stitch. This is actually quite similar to what you did with the camel if you're following along with all of these. It's just on a much smaller scale. All right, and I should be able to just get a little more in that top. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and close this leg off. Okay, and again, you're going to go through that loop to get a knot in there. And I'm just going to come in and come out so that I can hide that tail. All right, and so there's your first leg complete. All right, so that's how I'm going to do this second leg as well. For the hind legs, it's the exact same procedure, except when you get up into the thighs here, much like the camel, you don't want to overstuff this area. So just be mindful of that. You can see in my sample, there's a lot of space that I could have stuffed those more, but I didn't because I want his hind side I don't want it to stick out like that, right? I want it to be nicely together. So just pay attention to that. And so when I come back, I will have those done. All right, so the next step is to work on the donkey's face. So I've got my reference diagram here that was on the pattern page. And I'm going to go back into these nose pieces and just give a quick tidy up on some of those long hairs, making sure not to cut out my knot. I just want to make sure that they're not going to cause me any grief when I go to put this together. Okay, and you can see I've actually left my lips attached because I do not want to mess up my orientation of these. So I've cut partially around this one and I won't cut out that little bit until I'm ready to install them. So we're going to take these two nose halves and I'm going to put them like this, and I'm just following along with my diagram. So I would say an easy way to do this to make sure that you put them on the correct way. First of all, keep in mind you're going to need a mirror image of what you're doing for each side of the donkey. So take this diagram and you've got this nose piece, and you can see how that just sits right on there like that. Okay, so that'll be for that side. And then this lip here matches that piece. So I'm just going to finish cutting this one out. You see how it's got that little curve up there, and then down there it's kind of a bit of a point. See how that actually fits right in there. So then you know that is how that piece is oriented on there. All right, so before I lose track of what I am doing, I'm going to go ahead and whip stitch this into place with my matching floss. So I'm actually going to come in here and I'm just going to be whip stitching along this curve. When I get to this edge where they're flush, I'm just going to go straight through as such, just to get up there, like a whip stitch along that edge. Okay, and then that's as far as I'm going to go, and I'm going to come through to the back side, and in there, go through my loop, make a little knot, and then I'm just going to hide my tail in between like we've been doing, and cut that off. Okay, and I'm going to do that exact same thing to the other side. So I've got this one, be facing that way. And if you start to lose track of what you're doing, which direction your pieces need to be oriented, just follow along with that diagram. It's very handy to reference. So for this one, I have to flip it. It goes like that. And again, I'm just going to be sewing along that curve. So I'm going to come in here, actually I'm going to come right through the back. And again, when you get up to this edge, you're just going to do a whip stitch right around that edge as such. Okay, and then I'm going to come around the back, come in a little bit, just through that white felt, and I'm going to create my own little loop so that I can tie this into a knot, and then go back through again and cut that close. So the next step, you're just going to want to get rid of a little bit of this excess billet. First of all, I'm going to get rid of this tail. I don't need that, and that's just going to cause problems probably for me. And I've got this little bit of excess, and I don't want to cut through my stitches, but I'm just going to remove that. It'll keep it from getting too thick to work within. And I'm going to cut that little bit of a tail off as well. And in here, just because of how I tied off, I kind of have to go a little interesting curve, and that's fine. It's just that it doesn't get too bulky around that nose area. Okay, and so we're now going to place these on our donkey pieces. So that fits just nicely like that. And this one fits nicely like that. Okay, so now I'm going to take my matching floss for the ecru, and I'm going to whip stitch just along this edge here. If you want to be really particular, you can, for that last stitch, switch over to the pink, but it's so small that I don't think it's necessary, and I don't think that you'll see it. And we're going to come around this side and come inboard just a little bit with your thread, make a small loop. Okay, cut that off, and I'm going to cut off this little straggler over here. So I'm going to repeat that on that side, but I'm just going to show you that after you do that, you're now going to want to remove this thickness, because again, you don't want it to get too thick in there. So don't come right up to your stitching, but close, all right? And so then that's that piece done. I'm going to do the same thing to this side. All right, so I've got both those noses done. This side I still have to cut out that back flap a little bit. Get rid of that thickness, and I've got both of those ready to go. So those are going to get sandwiched together like that. Okay, I'm going to start to sew at this upper corner here, and I'm going to be whip stitching along, and I'm going to continue on until I get up until this area, because that's where I will need to switch my thread color. All right, so you can see that I have done my whip stitch all the way up to that point. I am going to leave this gray attached because it's such a little bit that I need to go, and then I'm back into the gray again. I'm just going to take my ecru, and I'm going to go ahead and get in there. Okay, make sure that I'm nicely lined up. And make sure that my gray floss is out of the way and not getting in my way. And this, you always want to make sure this stuff is pushed to the inside. Find some hard spots in there because of some gluing, and if you have problems like I am, grab out your needle nose pliers and pull it through. Sometimes it's just that you've hit one of these knots and it's hard to get that stitch through too. Okay, and I'm keeping my eye on. I'm just going to get one more little stitch on the inside there. Now I'm going to open this up gently and pull my thread to the back and come through that loop, and then I'm going to tie this off. And now my next color is back to that blush pink. And again, I'm going to start this on this inside, right up there. Got a lot of these little knots in there that you need to really tuck in there. All right, and so then again with this one, you're gonna do the same thing. You're gonna come inside. And actually what I might do is just on this end create a loop. Like that. And then I'm gonna come up inside to hide it. Okay. And then I'm gonna cut that flush. All right, that was the trickiest bit that there was on this one. So then I'm back to my gray. And I'm just gonna come in behind there and back on track over here. All right, and I'm just gonna do this little stitch here, and then we're already gonna start to stuff that nose area. Then I'm gonna grab out my stuffing. In this area, you'll probably want your tweezers. And if you don't have tweezers, stuffing tool, and try to get right into that nose. Okay, that's pretty good for the head. So at this point, I am going to just continue to whip stitch and stuff along the way. When I get back to here though, before I tie off, I am going to put that tail on. So I'll come back to you when it's time to do that. Alrighty, so I finished stuffing the donkey and I've come all the way around to where the tail's going to get put on. And the tail's going to have the smaller end is the bottom and it's going to swing out like so. So I'm just going to take it and just sew it on at the top of his rear end. Okay, and then I'm going to hide that to end this so that we can't see the knot is I'm going to bring this down to an area where it should be hidden by the leg when I put the leg on. The next step is the hind legs. So I've got them here and you're going to want to line them up, but they're kind of shaped like that. And you're pretty much following this curve right here for knowing when to glue. And I'm actually going to switch these because see my knotted end is on this side and this is on this side. So I'm going to switch so that my knots are hidden. I don't really have to cut anything off. And once you've got those nicely lined up, you know where to put the glue. And once you get an initial bit of glue in there, you can always come back in and add some more if it's not holding exactly where you want it. And before it dries, make sure you get those legs nicely shaped and that they are relatively even top to bottom so that when he's standing on both legs. I've got one little bit of a tail there. I'm just gonna get rid of that. Okay. And before I glue more, I'm actually gonna go ahead and put his front legs on just to see how that's looking. So the front legs, it's the same thing. You kind of line them up. Even on both sides. Make sure he stands nicely. That's actually pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and I think I might just start with this one because it's hard to hold them both into place. We've got glue under the one. That's pretty good and those are pretty lined up. Glue the second one. And for this one too, if you are having problems lining things up, feel free to take pin or a couple of pins and like put them through first, you know, get them oriented where you want them and then you can do your gluing. You can also stitch instead of gluing. That's totally okay as well. All right, so then the next step is the cloak. So the cloak, this is probably the only piece that has little lines there that are actually meant to be cut out. So those are his little armholes kind of for his cloak. And remember we did this out of an evergreen felt, and in my original version I use a nice green fleece, which works well too because the fleece doesn't fray at the ends, so it's a nice one to work with and I like the shade of it. But I wanted to show you this one just with the felt so you can see there's another option there. So I'm just finding my middle point and I'm gonna make sure I line that up on the middle back of this little donkey. And you want your front legs going through these two cutouts. Okay, so then you're going to take your matching floss and you're going to pull his cloak together at the front. So I can show you this one. So probably at about where his lip start is where you want to start to sew this together. All right, you may need to pull the cloak forward a little bit. And I'm going to start my whip stitch down. Okay, so when you get down to this area, I've come down this front part. Now it's time to work on those cutouts. So I'm going to kind of move his leg out of the way as well as I can. And I want to stitch, hopefully you can see this cutout now closed on this side. And then I'll come back and do the other side so it all kind of matches up. Alright, so see that's sewn shut now. So I'm just gonna stick my needle in to come back over to where I need to start the other cutout sewing shut. And put this around his leg. And line that up. It's two little tabs up. And continue your stitch. Okay, and then you're gonna close up this whole bottom area. So again, I'm gonna slip my needle in through till I can get to that area that's not sewn up yet along the bottom, and I'm just gonna whip stitch across to fully close off this coat. Okay, now that I'm just at the end there, this side stays completely open. I'm just gonna go ahead and make a loop, go inside of that loop. And come inside of that coat, just so that I can cut my floss flush so you won't see it. Okay, so for the harness, you're going to start with your piece of cord. And the first step is you're going to glue it under this nose area, and it's going to come around like that. So I'm going to use a glue gun for this. Essentially, you're just lining this up kind of at the nose area and following that contour around. Okay, and then at the bottom, you're going to cut your cord and throw a little bit of glue in there so that it is held down. Okay, and then the next part, all right, so I'm gonna go back and do the ears now because I seem to have forgotten to put them on. So these ears, you kind of just want them positioned towards the top of the head, behind the eye, like in this area, and you're gonna try to match that with both sides. And they're sticking kind of straight up like that, and you got the pointy part up at the top. We're going to continue on with our harness. We're going to come in here and do the part that comes in front of his ears, and between his eyes and his ears. So it's going to run something like this. Okay. So once you have an idea of where that's going to run, I'm going to put the glue actually on my cord. Trim in between the ears and the eyes, and I'm going to follow that same positioning on this side. Okay, and then cut that cord so that you can end up with it flush. And And if you need to, you can add more glue in there to hold it in place. So now you've got this piece of cord left over for the reins. So I'm going to take one of my jump rings and slip it onto this cord. All right, and then I'm going to go into this bottom chin area through that actual cord. And you might need a little needle nose pliers to help you pull that out. There we go. All right, and then I'm going to come through this jump ring. And go back through minimum ones. And I will actually go through a second time. And on this time, I will make my knot while I'm in there. And I'm just going up here so that I can cut that thread flush. Alright, so you've got basically this little jump ring off of underneath his chin with your cord running through it. And the next jump ring is the upper one. You're going to thread the next one onto the cord, and this one gets sewn behind the ears. You can see in this one it gets put in right behind there. So I'm going to come in first actually with my thread and get that under there and go through that ring. I like to have the rings already put on the cord because it actually helps. They're small, so to handle them it's a little challenging, but if they're on the cord it's a little bit easier, I find. If you think it might be easier just putting the rings on and then installing the cord, by all means you can do it like that as well. So I've got that one installed. So then I'm going to go just once more back through that jump ring underneath, and I'm going to make my knot this time. Alright, and so then you're going to pull, kind of even out those ends. And this is just what you think looks good. So I kind of like to curve these around and loop them up a little bit. So I'm probably going to, I'll add a bit of glue in behind there. Again, you could put a stitch in there if you prefer. Otherwise they'll just keep bouncing around on me. So this one, I'm going to have it come down and end a bit more at the back, kind of like so. I'll add a little bit more glue in there. And this upper one, I'll have it come across like that. And I don't think I need to glue that one in place. So I'm just gonna come up here and glue them over here. My bundle of sticks should hide this afterwards. And again, you can always throw a stitch in there if you'd like. Okay, so there's his reins, and I'm just gonna cut that remaining cord off. And then the last thing is this bundle of twigs. Two last steps, the twigs and the moss. So the bundle of twigs, if you make your own, you can do that. Just make sure you have some thin wire that you wrap them with, because it's the easiest way to get them put on his body. So decide how you want to have these sticks. I kind of like it going front to back like that. So I'm actually going to wrap this wire around like this, and I'm going to twist it at the bottom. And cut that end and just push it up. Okay, and then the last step is to throw in some of this Spanish moss. And you can, this is a good way to hide little bits. Like if you wanted to hide where the reins were coming off, you could use the Spanish moss for that. I'm just going to take a little bunch and glue it kind of under there. Right, and you can go through, take out any straggly bits, or make sure that they're glued down if you're not positive. Throw in a little bit more. Okay, and then that's it for your donkey. He's all ready to go. He stands nicely. He's ready for your nativity scene.